Welcome back to the channel. My name is Priscilla, and in this video I'm going to be showing you guys how to make the pattern for a shift dress which has a Peter Pan collar around the neckline and has a gathered hem ruffle detail around the bottom of the dress. This is the dress I plan on wearing pretty soon, and I thought it would be great to come on here, show you guys how to make the pattern, and then create a separate video for the sewing tutorial. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up if you like to see the sewing tutorial, and comment down below all of your suggestions, ideas and questions. And without further ado, let's jump straight into the tutorial. I'm going to be using the following tools to create this pattern. I've got myself some pattern paper, which I'm going to be linking down below. I also have a long ruler as well as my front and back bodice patterns, which I already have a separate video for and will be linked in the description box. I'll also be needing my set square and my pattern master to make sure my lines are really accurate and on point. I'll also be needing some tape measures to take down measurements. I will need a marker pen, pencil, as well as an eraser, and also some pins just in case. I'll also be needing some tape to hold down my bodice block onto the pattern paper. But first, you need to decide on the following measurement: how long you want your dress to be, how wide you want the ruffle to be, and how wide you want the dress around your hips to sit. So once those are decided and written down, we can go ahead and plan our front patterns. I'm starting off by drawing a long vertical line, which is going to become our center front, and I've grabbed my front bodice and I'm going to just trace off my neckline, my shoulder points, and my arm curve. As for the side seams and the hem, we're going to be changing that up because the shift dress silhouette is on the loose side, so we don't even need that in this case. So I'm just going ahead to decide on how long I want my dress to be. So for this top half of the shape dress, I want it to be 77 centimeters long. Remember, we're going to be adding the ruffle to the bottom, so that means the dress is going to end up being longer than this length. So I'm just adding the other points to make the hem nice and straight, and I'm drawing in my hemline for the front of the dress. And once I have marked that in place, I'm going to go to my front arm curve and open it by 2 centimeters because I want to be able to layer this dress with jumpers and tops underneath. So I want the armholes to be a little bit looser than what the original bodice block is. So I'm just going in here to connect that 2 cm extension to the hem, spreading out in an A-line silhouette, as well as transfer my notches, which is the arm curve and the waist. So I'm also going in to connect my dashed lines for the shoulder, and then raise my center front neckline by 3 centimeters because I want the Peter Pan collar to sit a bit higher on my neck compared to what the original bodice pattern has in terms of neckline shape. So once that is done, I quickly added a notch because that would just make my life so much easier when it's time to connect my collar piece to the neckline of my dress. So I've just roughly sketched down the shape I want my collar to be. You can make yours whatever shape you want. Believe you me, you can have it like scalloped edge, you can have this round curve I'm going for, you can have yours a bit pointed, but I wanted the simple round tipped Peter Pan collar. So once I'm okay with the shape, I'm just going in to refine the lines using my marker pen in a different color because we need to trace off this shape onto a different pattern paper. So this is for the front, but you also need to consider the back because you want to have one collar piece that goes from the front of the dress all the way to the back. As you can see here, I've gone ahead and I've added my 1 centimeter seam allowance around the shoulder, neck, side, as well as the hem of the dress, because remember we need to connect the ruffle detail to the bottom of this pattern piece here. Once you're happy with your front as well as the shape of your collar, we're going to go in and grab a fresh piece of pattern paper and trace off this front shape for the Peter Pan collar. So it sits into the neckline. That's why I've added a 1 centimeter seam allowance so the collar can easily connect to the neck of the main dress. But like I said earlier on, we need to extend the collar by half of the center back measurement. So I'm just going in here to measure my back neckline of my back bodice, and mine ended up being 10 centimeters, and I'm just going to draw a line in this direction. You can see I've matched up that middle line in the pattern master to the neckline, so that ensures the collar goes in the right direction. So I'm going to do the same on the top and on the bottom of the back collar piece and connect them together, and that's going to become my center back. So I'm just going in here to add a 1 centimeter seam allowance because I want to cut a pair for each side, so I can sew up the bottom, sew up the top, sew up the back, and then turn it inside out and tuck it into the neck of the dress. So that's why I'm just going in here to add 1 centimeter all the way around, including at the center front here. So I've gone ahead and I've added my annotations and I've cut out my collar piece, and this is what my Peter Pan collar looks like. You will need to cut 2 pairs. So next up, I'm going to be creating the front arm curve. Because it's a sleeveless dress, we need to finish off the arm curve neatly, so when you wear the dress, the armhole is nice and clean. And I'm deciding on a facing that is 6 centimeters wide, inclusive of seam allowances, and I've just marked that across, and I'm joining my dash lines together, so when I grab a fresh pattern paper, I can trace off this line that I'm drawing on here. So this is going to become the front arm curve facing, and I'm just going to trace it up onto another pattern paper, add my seam allowances, add my annotations saying how many I need and what exactly this pattern is before going ahead to cut it out. So I have a separate pattern piece for the front arm curve detail that goes around the sleeve. So this is a beautiful way to finish off sleeveless dresses, and it just looks so nice and professional even from the outside. So I'm just going in to cut off my front main dress pattern, and these are all of my front pieces taped down on the table. So I have my collar piece, I have, which you would need 2 pairs for, 1 pair for the left and 1 pair for the right. I've also gone ahead and I've cut out my front facing, which you will need 2 pieces for, 1 for the left as 1 for the right. You cut it along the grain. You also need your main front piece, which you cut on a fold, so you have 1 piece that just goes across the whole front and you don't end up having a seam across the center front. For the back patterns, we're essentially going to follow the same step we did for the front. I've drawn a long vertical line which will become my center back. I'm going in here to trace off my neckline, shoulder and arm curve from my bodice block onto the pattern paper underneath, as well as transfer my notches. But to make the process go easier, I'm going to grab my front main dress pattern. I'm going to trace off the side seam because we want the front and back side seams to match, as well as the hem. So that's why I'm just doing it this way. So I'm going in here to trace off the same hem dimensions from the front onto the back, and I'm just going to take off the front piece so I can draw in my arm curve and move on to create the remaining patterns for the back. So I'm just going in here to connect my dash lines for my arm curve, draw in all of my necessary notches before going in to draw in a grain line, because the back has to be cut along the grain as well. So this is the back piece. You will need 2 pieces, 1 for the left and 1 for the right, because I want a zip on the center back. So I'm just going in here to plan my back arm curve facing like we did for the front, and I've just marked that 6 centimeter width from the front piece, and I'm going in here to mark it on the back as well, because you want the front and back facings to connect so they sit nicely inside of the dress. So I'm just going in here to connect my dash lines together from the shoulder points all the way to the side seam, write down how many I need, and then transfer that onto fresh pattern paper. So with that said, I'm just going in here to add a 1 centimeter seam allowance all around the arm curve, the side, but I added a 2 centimeter zip allowance on the center back because I want a zip on the center back of the dress. So you just go in and trace out the back arm curve facing, add your seam allowances, and this is what the back arm curve facing would look like. It's more or less the same as the front. The only difference is the back arm curve is a little bit more shallow compared to the front piece. So once that is done, I'm just going in here to cut out my main back dress pattern, cutting around the 1 centimeter seam allowance that we gave. So this way, when it's time to cut out the pieces for the dress, we don't have to add any extra seam allowance because we already added that in the pattern here. The last pattern piece we need is the gathered hem ruffle detail, and to do that we need to calculate how wide we want that rectangle to be. So I'm just going in here to measure the width of the front as well as the back of the dress, and they are both 60 centimeters wide. Remember, this is half of each side, so the front is going to be 120, the back is going to be 120, and we'll end up with 360 when you multiply that measurement by 3, because I want the rectangle to be really long, so when you gather that back into the bottom of the dress, the ruffle detail is nice and full. So I decided on having it 20 centimeters wide, and I'm just going in here to mark the width across this pattern paper I folded in half, and I'm connecting the dashed lines together like so, as well as drawing any other necessary lines I need, such as the side seam, which would sit at the center back of the dress. So I'm just drawing in the line here before going ahead to cut out the hem pattern. So the dimension for this particular pattern here is 182 centimeters by 22 centimeters, because this width here is half of what we actually need, because I don't want to have to waste pattern paper. So when it's time to cut, I know I need to cut this pattern piece on a fold, but it is 22 centimeters wide because we need to fold up the hem and then attach the top to the bottom of the main dress. So these are all of the pattern pieces done. They're not that many, thankfully, but I think I'm going to be experimental when it comes to actually sewing the dress. I think I'm going to play around with prints as well as with colors. But I hope you guys enjoyed watching this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, comment all of your questions, suggestions and ideas down below as usual, and I will see you beauties in my next video. Bye.